I'm waiting for her to say it. Did
Who?
she say it?
What? Recording started? Oh, yeah, this is all being recorded.
Is it?
You should be careful of recording devices, Mark. It's better being a James Bond fan. You should be used to secret cameras and stuff.
I suppose it depends where you're squatting. Welcome to Making Tracks.
You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
I got Fantha.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Welcome to episode 219 of Making Tracks. Host here is Mark Mulcaster, joined by the very refined and elegant. Brian's not on this one. It's Mr. Mark Newbold. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I was going to say, I thought you were reading the wrong cue card then. That doesn't sound right at all. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks, bud. Got a bit of a cold, a bit bunged up. We will soldier on, you know.
I edit out my coughs because they're irritating, but I'm going to leave your sniffs in because
nice.
It's empathy, isn't it? We all feel sorry for you now.
What are we talking about? What is going on in the world of Star Wars this week?
There's been loads going on in the world of Star Wars this week. Obviously, last week we had the Andor trailer and we had Kathleen Kennedy drama. Is she going? Is she staying? Well, she's staying. And this week I thought might be a bit quieter, but actually it's been pretty much just as busy. Rick McCallum speaking to a Young Indiana Jones Chronicles podcast, and obviously the conversation turns to Star Wars because why wouldn't it? And in there, he started talking about Star Wars Underworld, which of course is the show that loads of people thought they were going to get way back when, but never did. It looks like it could have been, or quite possibly should have been, something absolutely phenomenal. So there was 100 episodes written. They were going to cost $40 million per episode. It would have been HBO, if not for a last-minute snafu that saw that deal not quite happen. ILM were going to do the visuals. John Williams was going to do the music. It would have been, could have been, probably should have been absolutely incredible. When you look back at moments in history like this, sliding doors moments, what ifs, are you glad that Lucasfilm didn't take this massive risk, or do you kind of look back now with the benefit of hindsight? And bearing in mind, Rick McCallum said, if we'd have made this dark kind of sexy show, I don't think Disney would have bought us. Do you think it was quite right that this show didn't get made, or do you look at it and think, I wish this had happened?
Do you know what? It's one of those things, isn't it? It is the biggest what if moment. Okay, they're saying $40 million per episode. Now, the question is, was it that they had story planned out across 100 episodes, or was that maybe just wishful thinking? And in reality, yeah, it probably would cost $40 million because, let's be fair, 8 episodes of Star Wars streaming on Disney Plus tends to cost about the same as a feature film's, about like 200 odd million. So those numbers actually, in comparison, is quite a lot of money, but isn't anything of a big surprise. Would they have got there? Would they have maybe only done 2 seasons and gone, do you know what? This is way too expensive. Let's do a film.
It feels like it was a different time, though, doesn't it? Because physical media was then.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that's the thing. There was no streaming platform, really, not in such a way that it was today. I mean, you look at what else was going on. We had the 30th anniversary of Star Wars in 2007. More importantly, The Force Unleashed was released. And then in 2008, we had Clone Wars. It's kind of hard to imagine that it would be, but then you kind of think, well, actually, you know, you look at what HBO did with Game of Thrones and how that went from being this series that really struggled to kind of find its identity and had some real developmental issues. And then look at where it is now. It's a multi-billion-dollar franchise. So who's not to say that, yeah, we could have been tuning in Monday nights on, say, Sky Atlantic and watching Star Wars Underworld.
It is an incredible, when you think about it, opportunity that was missed, but maybe in the benefit of hindsight, a good thing that it was.
Maybe, yeah. Although saying that, this could have actually led into slightly more in the vogue of like Andor than, say, The Mandalorian. But at least this is not 100 episodes of Star Wars detours.
Very true. Very true.
You know,
Another
because
lost classic.
and that's the thing, isn't it? You think about it. This would have been Star Wars. This would have been George's Star Wars. How that would have affected the Disney acquisition? Obviously, there might be some issues with rights and stuff, but the very sheer existence of this show, I don't think that would have affected it too much. Not when you consider actually what we're kind of starting to get from Disney Plus, and also some of those things, maybe not necessarily story beats per se, but maybe some kind of ideas that were kicked around for Underworld has made it onto a Star Wars streaming show that we don't realize.
Well, that's very true, because when Lucasfilm was sold to Disney, they were sold kit and caboodle. So
Yeah.
those 100 episodes were more than sketched out. They'd got high-end sci-fi writers involved, so they'd got showrunners from other shows. Russell T Davies was mentioned. Ron Moore was mentioned. All of these people had done substantial work before and would go on to do substantial work. But nevertheless, you get that brain trust of people together, throw around the ideas that they did, and it must be frustrating because, as you say, if anything ever came of it, other than 1313, which we know was quite a long way down the line, there was trailers for 1313 came out before it got sort of cancelled in 2012. Nothing else has really been seen. So it just makes me wonder now that the technology is there, and Lucasfilm and Disney, specifically Disney, are trying to lead the charge with the technology to get the cost down. You'd think something like an Underworld that back in 2007, let's say, when they were making it for a 2008 or 9 release, was 40 million then. It probably isn't 40 million now, weirdly, nearly 20 years on. And yet you go back 20 years before the era of Underworld, you're getting towards Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi cost 32 million for a motion picture. So I think the technology, in retrospect now, would help it. But as you say, those stories are still sitting there on the shelf, aren't they?
Those creators must still be under quite a NDA. You do wonder, right? You look at that famous scene from the beginning of the Phantom Menace behind the scenes where you've got all the storyboards and George is going with his fluorescent yellow and his pink highlighters and going, right, that's live action, that's CGI and all that. And you've got like everybody turning around, John Knoll and Rob Coleman kind of going, how the hell are we going to do that? Now, somebody like George Lucas would be like, right, great. Okay. So we're doing it now in 2018, 2019. We're going to use the volume. So that's going to save us a lot of time and effort and money. We won't just save that money. We're just going to put that money somewhere else. And so like he'll either redistribute it, or it just means that whatever we were to get would be possibly even more fantastically amazing and might look even more incredible. So I tell you what, it would definitely make for an interesting what if series. Like
it would really would. It really would. It totally would. That was totally the thought process of where would this have gone? And also because, for example, Jon Favreau coming into the Star Wars realm and works and helps on developing what is now known as stagecraft off his work on Jungle Book and then soon after on Lion King. You think that whole process, that thought process, that technology would possibly come to form, or an earlier version of, but would have started off if George had have done this volume thing. That whole stagecraft ethos just feels like such a George thing.
Oh, it's massively, yeah. It's such an interesting concept in itself, and you think about like when he was trying to get the Grady Ranch project up and running, which was more sound stages. I guess at least for now, we'll never know.
Hi, this is Guy Henry, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Enjoy.
This could be nothing, or it could be something. But industry insider Daniel Rickman on his Patreon page has mentioned recently that Lucasfilm are developing a show set during the Knights of the Old Republic era. Doesn't say anything other than that. He does mention that Kathleen Kennedy did mention this back in 2019, that something was happening with the Knights of the Old Republic era. She didn't say whether it was films or TV or games or what. And it's been fairly quiet since then. But that was out there a few weeks back now, that there might be something bubbling along with Kota. Mark, what do you think of this? It's a part of the Star Wars galaxy that's been around really going way back to the earliest Dark Horse era. We've gone through eras, and it's quite an expansive era as well. It's not a defined era as much as some of the more modern ones are. But if they were ever to do this, I remember reading about George Lucas mentioning it on stage, I think it was Celebration 3, that he was toying with the idea of a Knights of the Old Republic era something or other. Do you think that's an era that would be a safe place to go? Or do you think because we've had, the online role-play game going on for, 11, 12 years now, there's so much lore in history that the real deep fans of that might get niggled that it doesn't adhere to the storylines? Where would you sit with that right now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was the thing. I was playing the Old Republic on day one when most servers kind of launched, and oh my God, I can remember waiting hours to get onto the servers. However, what happened was they kind of rolled and kind of merged some of the KOTOR era stuff into that. They reintroduced Revan and things like that. So yeah, possibly. I mean, I actually don't know how many people like playing the Old Republic. I mean, it's obviously still enough because it's still going on and it's still ticking over. Fans of a certain age, which would be people maybe a little bit younger than us and also a little bit older than me, so kind of maybe let's say 10 years either side of me, would still very much welcome that. Because as you say, it's not necessarily a defined era. And I suppose that's the thing, is maybe we look at KOTOR as being a certain thing. Maybe Kathleen Kennedy looks at it as being a slightly different thing, because it's not to us anyway, it's not a specifically defined era that would cover just one thing. Like, you say with Clone Wars, we know exactly the time period it covers, but it's such an expanse of time. It could be very early in the Old Republic kind of days or later. And so much happens in that kind of expanded universe. It'd be interesting to see what they would do, how much would get pulled in from Legends and how much would either be rewritten or just amalgamated to make something slightly cohesive.
Yeah, that's a great point, because like you say, there's so much source material, but in recent years, I'm just thinking straight off the top of my head, something like something in Rise of Skywalker with the Force dyad and things like that, the rule of two kind of being mentioned a bit more, and the Plagueis stuff in Acolyte. So to go back into that deep, dark past of not only the Jedi, but the Sith during those older Republic eras, and not that they ever referred to it as the Old Republic then, you only refer to it as the Old Republic now. To them, it was just the Republic. But nevertheless, there's plenty to mine in there. Would you rather see that as a film series, or would you rather see that as a TV series or animated?
Oh, God, do you know what? That's the thing. There's so many different options, isn't there? The animated idea is quite cool. Do you know what? I would really like to see like some kind of retelling of like Knights of the Old Republic. That real core group of, Revan and Shatil Shan and that. Maybe that could be animated. I kind of feel that could probably be a good way to maybe do that. I mean, it probably would appeal to lots of people. I would definitely welcome a movie. But there is that worry, isn't there, that they talk about that and they talk about James Mangold's film.
I mean, that's Dawn of the Jedi era. It feels like if that happened, it does feel like they could start on a path, couldn't they? Stepping through the centuries.
That's what I'm saying. Like that could start something off. It's kind of at risk of them doing kind of what they did with Acolyte. When I was at Pinewood the other weekend, they had a number of the Acolyte lightsaber hilts, and a girl from ILM about who was kind of explaining to the general public and stuff, but also to me afterwards. We were, got the hilts out of the cabinet and had a look at them.
Nice.
And she was saying, well, basically the thinking was that, because it was 100 years before, they weren't quite as well refined and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, but I kind of get that maybe from a semi-logical perspective, but we're talking about galaxy that has been a galaxy, an inhabited galaxy with faster than light transportation for like thousands of years. So what I wouldn't want would be like Knights of the Old Republic and made to be everybody has like a traditional bladed lightsaber.
Yeah, medieval feel.
I don't want too much of a nose of a King Arthur type Camelot in Star Wars. It's still got to feel like Star Wars. My only slight concern is whether or not they think they're doing something really cool, but actually what they're doing is maybe screwing the pooch a little bit.
I think as you say, I think we said it the other week actually.
Yeah.
The technology, hyperdrive, it's finessed, but it's still hyperdrive. It gets faster, but it's still hyperdrive. The process, the core of it, the flux capacitor that makes a hyperdrive work is still the same thing. You just make it that little bit better. And I think a lot of it is aesthetics. If you're going back to the High Republic era, a couple of centuries before, I can't imagine there's much tech that's around now that wasn't around then. It's been refined or tweaked or, that was my big problem with Last Jedi. They suddenly discovered how to track through hyperspace, or it felt like they suddenly discovered it. I know there's mentions in Rogue One, but even there, you're only talking 50 years, half a century. You've had a galaxy flying around for 25,000 years. So.
And I think that's the thing. I think when they think about the timeline, they think about it in maybe more of a pragmatic real world scenario where, you think about 50 years from where we are now back to like the 70s. There's no mobile phones, there's no internet. Look at computers, we're still very much on that rapid development. And you kind of think, well, there would come a point where that curve would kind of flatten out a little bit or quite a bit. The changes are very incremental and maybe not noticeable between 5, 10 and 15 years, but maybe 200 and 500 years.
And then some, that flattening of the curve would have been centuries ago, wouldn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Hi, this is David W. Collins, voice actor for Star Wars and sound designer at Skywalker Sound. You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
So last week we put out the call for some listeners' questions, and we don't usually do this mid-show, but I'm doing it mid-show today because we've had lots of replies, and I'm going to throw them at you bullet point style, Mark. So
Okay.
hopefully you're sitting comfortably, and hopefully you're ready. So get ready. I'm going to read them out to you now. So first one, Richard Hutchinson, one of our co-hosts on Collecting Tracks. Are the next Star Wars releases make or break for the future of the franchise?
I think so. I think for cinema and Star Wars in their immediate future, yes.
I agree. I think they've got to stick the landing on the next few releases around the time of the 50th, especially because if there's a lot of goodwill coming out the back end of the 50th, I think that's definitely going to help the franchise going forward. Next question from Graham Round. Who shot first?
Han.
Completely agree. Greedo didn't fire. He nailed him. Cold blood. Yes. Completely agree.
No, exactly.
Next question from a friend of the site, Rob Wayne. For question, I'm rewatching The Mandalorian and enjoying it a lot more the second time as the hype and criticism has gone away. Which Star Wars movie or show do you think deserves a second watch?
Last Jedi.
Last Jedi? You think that's
Last
the one?
Jedi. Yep.
Good answer. For a film.
Kenobi for a series.
Oh, great answer. I'm going to say for a series. Actually, I'm going to agree with you on Kenobi. I enjoyed it the first time and I really enjoyed it the second time. Movie, until something else comes along that changes my mind, I'm going to say Solo. Because I think that film deserves so much more than it got. Next question from our...
I was just doing it just to troll you a little bit,
I know you were, darling. I know you were. Brian Cameron, great question this. Does Jon Favreau making Oswald the Lucky Rabbit kill off any hopes of a future for The Mandalorian beyond the movie?
I don't necessarily know that it does. I know it's slightly different scale, but some of these producers and directors have got multiple projects spinning at the same time. So maybe it's not necessarily the end of The Mandalorian and Jon Favreau's involvement in Galaxy Far, Far Away. It just might mean that maybe it's less day-to-day, maybe. And maybe the hope that he would maybe take more of a permanent position at Lucasfilm might be less likely now. Sorry, this is not a one-word answer, but he's a creative, right? So if he's got other projects either that he wants to do, was approached about doing and feels he can juggle it, then fair play to him.
I agree. I think somewhere in his wallet, I think Jon Favreau's got a little list of franchises he wants to work on. And I think he's working his way through them. And I think he's now moving on to Disney. Come on, he launched the MCU with Iron Man. He's launched the Disney Plus era for all of Disney shows with The Mandalorian. And now he's going to bring back Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, which is basically the character that Mickey Mouse is based upon. I don't think he could say no to this. And so I think he's still going to be involved because we are definitely not done with the Mandoverse. But it just feels like with Star Wars, going back to Richard's question, that it's very important because it just feels like there's a little shift and that we might be focusing away from that Mando era for a little while whilst we sort of maybe focus more on the Rey era a little bit further down the line. So, yeah, I don't think it affects Mandalorian or the Mandoverse beyond the movie, but I think it shifts the tone a bit.
I don't think that they will do anything with Mandalorian and Grogu that will then write themselves into a corner that they can't get out of in the future. I think these characters will maybe be a recurrent and you could see it that they could probably turn up in like the Rey film or whatever happens afterwards.
Very true. You're really good at these short answers, Mark.
I know. But there's one thing I just wanted to say, and I suppose this is something that like I talked about, with a few people who are working on the films and series at Pinewood the other day, is that I think from the fans' perspective, we hold up the franchise because it is the one thing that we hold most dear. And even people who hold the franchise most dear, who are professionals, not everybody wants to just work in a galaxy far, far away for their entire life. They have other projects that either they're approached about or they want to do. And so if you kind of stop allowing whoever these people are, take Jon Favreau, for example, then it's probably actually going to negatively affect his involvement in Star Wars anyway. But if he either steps away for a little bit or if there's a hiatus and then he comes back, that's beneficial because he's, a change is as good as like a break, isn't it?
Good short answer. Next question. Jamie Burns, our buddy Jamie Burns. Do you think that KK will step down after all the press that was leaked, or will she just stay for the hell of it? Well, I'll answer that one first off. I don't think she's going anywhere anytime soon. I think even in the capacity of a producer, let alone the president of Lucasfilm, she's sticking around. Why would she step away? So I can see her being around for quite a long time, and she goes when she wants to go. That's basically the bottom line on that one. What do you think, Mark?
I agree.
Great. I love these short answers. Adam O'Brien, our buddy from Panther Down Under. Hello, Adam. Should Quinlan Voss get his own series? Now, it doesn't specify TV series. Could mean animated series. It could mean a comic book series. What do you reckon?
Yeah, why not?
I agree. I think there's enough there with Quinlan Voss to do something with, and it would make Adam the happiest Australian on the planet as well. Next question, Mark Spriggs. What question needs to be answered from the end of the Bad Batch, perhaps in the next animated series? What do you want to know coming out the back of the Bad Batch?
I think it's the Sars Ventress, isn't it?
Could be. For me, it's Omega. I want to know what happens to Omega, and I want to know if Hunter gets back out there.
There's always a part in my mind that kind of thinks somewhere somebody is going to try and work out or potentially suggest that there is one character in the original trilogy, I don't know, in the Home One Command briefing room or something, that we can kind of like retcon and go, no, that's Omega. A bit like we kind of did with Old Man Rex in Jedi, yeah?
Yes.
I find Asajj Ventress quite and a fascinating character. And also, there you go. Talk about Quinlan Vos. Those two had quite a torrid time in
Dark
the books.
Disciple, was that?
Dark Disciple. I reckon there's definitely legs in those two.
Next question from David Bainton. Andor Season 2 predictions. Good grief, that's a big question.
Oh.
Give us one prediction you think from Season 2 of Andor.
There's going to be Stormtroopers.
Oh, wow. You're a visionary. I'm going to say that we will find out that there was more reason for shooting Tivik than him just hurting his arm. So I think you might learn that there's a bit more to Tivik than we thought.
Okay, serious one. I start to wonder if they double down with this whole idea of who really is the good guys in this fight. And I think we're really going to have to start questioning the ethics behind the rebellion.
Very good answer. And the final one for now, from Becca Benjamin, our great pal Becca Benjamin.
Oh, I love
Longer question, but I want a shorter answer. With the Andor and Ahsoka series giving more depth to Mon Mothma's character and how vital she is to the rebellion, would you say that she and Bail Organa and Saw Gerrera are the big three of this generation of Star Wars, similar to Leia, Luke, and Han of the first three films?
I think on an intellectual level, yes. The politics side of stuff, yes, absolutely.
It's a great question because they're not the heroic. They're not the heroic three, are they? So
no.
So
that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to the whole thing. Like, not all heroes wear capes, and not all rebels carry blasters.
I think
I'm going to get it on a t-shirt.
You should get it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds. Bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
This weekend, South by Southwest, the Future of World Building at Disney panel took place. It gave us an update on Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. It had Jon Favreau, man of the moment, coming out on stage to talk about working on Star Wars projects and how it's more like participating in something that's happening just off camera than what you see in the film. And to that point, he's talking about the upgrades to Smuggler's Run, the fact that we're going to see new characters, new worlds and locations coming into the ride. It will launch at the same time as the film hits the cinemas, 22nd of May, 2026. So if you're in a Disney park, you can go and ride the ride, get this new experience, and then go and see the film or vice versa. Mark, the synergy between the parks, between TV, between film and books and comics, Star Wars as a whole, it's taken a long time to get to the point where you can look at a situation like this and think, that is the synergy, that's the connectivity that I think Lucasfilm have wanted for a long time. Do you think there's a future in these kind of things happening? Not everyone can get to Disney. Not everyone has access to these things. But when the opportunities arise, something like this is very special, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of vital, isn't it? Because it keeps the parks and the parks rides really relevant. How more exciting is that? If you're not aware that, you go and see some kind of Mando and Grogu film, and then you just happen to go to Disney and you're sat on Smuggler's Run, and oh my God, you're flying through places that literally you have just seen the day before. That must be some kind of overarching brief on some of these properties. It's like, right, okay, what is this project? What does it mean to the parks? And how can we then kind of merge and link the shows and the films with the parks and vice versa?
I love the thought that this story of Star Wars now has expanded from earliest days of being a film, and then you get the holiday special and books and comics doing Marvel and such. But mostly it was print and paper. And now we get to a situation where we've got TV, as we've just discussed, and all the other avenues as well. But the fact that everything has an influence on everything else, the attempt, the effort to do with this current era what, okay, a bit looser, not official, but they tried to do with the EU and tried to make it hang together. It's commendable.
Well, exactly. And you think about it, actually, speaking of EU, you take like Shadows of the Empire, for example. That was a game and then everything else kind of hang off it. There are fans, myself included, that would absolutely love for some form of adaptation onto screen, be it animated or whatever. But the amount of time it takes to develop, market, and produce computer games these days, you don't have those rushed out kind of computer games, which are a little bit half-baked in some respects, like we used to get for film releases. So really, this is kind of like the next best thing on such a big scale. And also, you think about it, you go to a cinema, you go home, you play the game, and you're now taking on the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi or what have you. In this case, it's even more immersive. So it's really bringing and drawing like the audience into that galaxy far, far away on a level that's never been seen before.
It's given us a look at Endor, the wreckage of the Death Star around Endor. It's given us a beautiful glimpse of Bespin at this time period, because this is into the sequel trilogy era, and we're now seeing Bespin with a lot more traffic. It's still visibly the place that we know, and also seeing a sandcrawler on Tatooine. So there are different views of familiar locations that we're going to get to see. One of the other things that Favreau said, he says, one of the cool things about Disney is how we can tell our stories in so many different formats. This is to the crowd at South by Southwest. We're already taking Mando and Grogu from the TV screens to the movie screen, and at the same time, Dave Filoni and I are working with Asa to bring this story to the Disney parks too. It's something that only Disney can do, really. No other franchise, maybe outside of Harry Potter, maybe outside of Avatar, that have got rides in the parks. Marvel to a degree, but that's kind of a different vibe altogether. Star Wars being this unified storyline and having Galaxy's Edge as well. Such a great opportunity.
The best opportunity. None of them really have much scope to be able to just drop in these little, I suppose you almost call them Easter eggs or like nods to, and like, you look at Pandora and all that. I mean, it took so long to develop and build, and it takes so long to do a film, to the point whereby everybody's like, what was Avatar when it came out? Everybody just remembered it being almost like a one-hit wonder.
You saying that about Avatar is a great point. You say that about Avatar. Do you think, in a way, because we're Star Wars fans and we're inside the bubble and we see so much stuff, and there's bits you see I don't, bits I see you don't, like every fan. But for the most part, we're getting a massive chunk of Star Wars. We're getting comics every week. We're getting multiple books a year. We don't know when, we don't quite know what, but we know there's stuff coming, and there's plenty that's been announced. Kathleen Kennedy mentioned a whole buttload of stuff last week. Yeah. So because we're in a world and an era of Star Wars that is so prolific, and then you get something like a Disney park project like this that's going to really hook you in to a film that's just come out, do you think we kind of take it all for granted a little bit? I don't necessarily mean you and me. I'm talking the broader fandom. It's such a lot that we get. It's easier to be critical than be happy with what we get.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, let's be honest, right? We're both fans of other fandoms and franchises, and those franchises are really no different. They get stuff, and you get a new James Bond book, and people complain about the fact that James Bond's not in it, and it's a little bit woke and all that. And you get a new Star Trek series, and it's kind of retconning something that's happened 60 years ago or something. And, an interesting place to be, this predicament whereby everything is kind of kept catalogued, and we have record of this fictional history of all these different franchises, and we are the keepers of said timelines and stuff. And yet I think we forget about the creative endeavor, and actually how sometimes that's the most off-putting thing, is probably to come to a franchise and know that you can't do X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C because of it's either been done before, or no, we can't touch that because that's kind of in development or whatever. And it must be very kind of a hamstrung kind of feeling for the creatives. I think we get so protective of the franchise as well, don't we? Obviously we want quality content, and that's partly because we are, as much as we are fans of the franchise, we are the main consumers. We are the ones who, we want to be entertained. If that means we need lightsabers or we need TIE fighters and X-Wings going at it, there's a certain kind of aesthetic and quality and thing that we all look for in our Star Wars. And it could be, take maybe somebody like Rebecca, who's going to be more interested in maybe more of the politics and some of the more kind of subtextual commentary that is inbuilt into some series. And there'll be other people who are just like, no, I just want to see Obi-Wan and Vader go at it. That's all I care about. I mean, it's a monster, and everybody expects, there's been this expectation that every time you put something out in Marvel and Star Wars, it's got to do $1 billion. It's got to be like the thing where everybody talks about week in, week out whilst the series is streaming. But I guess the pragmatic thing is that's not always going to happen. And I think maybe if we checked ourselves a little bit, took a step back and realised that actually these people they're not just phoning it in. The creators, the people who are building the sets and the costumes and stuff, they're not just going, that'll do. They're putting their darndest into every little component, be it Pip on the Acolyte or something on Andor in like B2 or what have you, or have the doors open on a certain planet. That's been thought out, that's been discussed, and they've even gone back and redone it. And everybody's trying to make sure that they put out the best Star Wars they possibly can. And it's obviously down to everybody else how they react and when they see it. I'm glad I don't work in the franchise, probably because of the fans.
Hi, this is Jack Parker, Pip from The Acolyte, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Writing over on his Substack page, Clayton Sandell has written about the Easter egg that has been discovered in the Phantom Menace. A lot of people won't know this, that there is the face of George Lucas hiding in the pillars of Theed City near the end of Phantom Menace on Naboo. And Clayton, who was speaking to matte painter Caroline Green, confirmed that yes, indeed, the face of George Lucas was present on Naboo. It is in there. We weren't all going mad. And so here, speaking to Caroline, she says, I decided to get a picture of George. I put it on this plaque. I thought, well, that'll be cool. And by the time we shrink it down, his face is just a blur. Long story short, she shows it to her supervisor, who shows it to George. George walked in and basically thought it was kind of funny and said, go for it, leave it in. So there it is, a little Easter egg that's now been confirmed after 26 years. I remember that being out there years and years and years ago. I don't remember it being a secret, but people didn't know about it. Was that one of those things that you'd heard about back in the day?
Yeah, I have. It looks like the picture of George from end of Return of the Jedi, George, kind of grey in hair. If you kind of squint, you can fill in the details a little bit. But then it's like, how it's like, I go on Facebook and like I get like a Unilad article where they're saying, people have only discovered how to use a coat hanger. Like somebody's just put it up on TikTok because they're desperate to put some content out.
Like giving a 15-year-old a cassette player and a cassette and saying, do you know what this is?
Kinda, yeah. The franchise is so long, coming up to 50 years. There is stuff that that you take for granted that I don't know. And then you'll tell me and I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that. And you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's been like that for years. And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? About like, you've got new fans coming in at different times. And also because we have all this new stuff constantly, we're not going back and studying the films like we once used to, like you can kind of go back and intimately look at every single frame and every single inch from trilogy. And if you kind of like literally just give me like a snapshot of one corner of a picture, I could probably tell you where it's from or what the planet is and stuff.
Yeah.
But like nowadays, there's just so much. You just don't get a chance.
Totally.
To
and like you say about new fans coming in, there's new fans that will know the current stuff infinitely better than we ever will.
Oh, God, yeah.
Ever. Even going back to the prequel trilogy, we've watched those films dozens of times. Yeah. So we probably know them really well. And we know that we know the OT incredibly well. But as the nearer you get to now and the more stuff there is, the less you watch it, it's not absorbing in the same way.
Yeah, there's members in the Rebel Legion who know every single name of every single Jedi in the Acolyte. And I'm just like, okay. And partly that comes down to that kind of thing of like, it's whatever grabs you and your gateway into it, and also maybe what kind of resonates and stuff. And this is a wonderful thing actually about people like yourself and Clayton, about who put this stuff out every now and again, because it reminds us, because there's definitely people all over the world who's not known about this stuff.
You kind of forget that certain news items, not just Star Wars, but every sort of pop culture thing, kind of gets regurgitated every few years. It's like fashion being cyclical. Blairs will be back in soon. Disco gets cool every 10 years. So things will sort of come back around again. But it was a great thing for Clayton to be able to confirm this with the person that actually put it in that frame.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. Because I bet there's hundreds of these, let's call them Star Wars urban myths, with the franchise getting longer and longer in its age, as it were. We are passing out of the first-hand accounts for like the original trilogy. Probably be another 20 years before we really kind of get to that with the prequels. But there will be a time when that will happen and things will get forgotten if they are not recorded and if people aren't reminding us and kind of going, hey, do you remember when? I'm glad it got a lot of traffic on the site as well. Well, look, thank you very much to everybody for listening. Big thanks to everybody. And there's so many in this week's episode that I cannot remember all the listeners' questions that kind of came in thick and fast. Let's do that again. It's kind of a bit like an AMA type thing. Really, it's a AUA, isn't it? Ask us anything. If you want to ask us anything, then Mr. Newbold can tell you how you can get in touch.
I definitely can. I just want to give a shout out one more time. Richard Hutchinson, Graham Rand, Rob Wainford, Brian Cameron, Jamie Burns, Adam O'Brien, Mark Spriggs, David Bainton, Rebecca Benjamin, and we have one final question that's come in, and it's a good one. It's from David Gramillion. Why do we drive on a parkway and park on a driveway. I'm going to let you think about that answer, Mark, whilst we hear how you can get in touch.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
That's me done for this episode, mate.
So, until next week, everybody stay safe, take care, have a fantastic Star Wars, whatever it means to you. And if you unearth a little bit of random facts from the 1990s, be sure to share it. Stay safe, and may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Cannon Fodder.
Skyhawker not in this episode.